Bonjour mes amis, and welcome back to the Rose Woman Pod. Today we are talking self-nurturance. My guest is Cora Darlington. She's a life coach, a cognitive behavioral therapist, an NLP therapist, executive coach. She's really focused on women, particularly women entrepreneurs, resilient leaders, she says, are made from transforming burnout and time poverty and enhancing self-care, joy, and effectiveness. So that's what we're going to talk about, is how radical self-nurture can shift your whole experience of being in the world and not impact your efficiency, but rather amplify your effectiveness. So to prepare, I'd like to do a moment of self-nurture right now. So just if you're driving, don't close your eyes, but if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, just take a minute and settle in and see if you can feel your own heartbeat. And take a big, big breath and fill the whole chest cavity, open the sternum, lift up and spread the collarbones, and just let it all out with a big whoa, exhale. And a couple more of those, like just cleansing breaths, remembering that you are whole and complete below the surface of whatever's going on. You are totally stable and at ease and graced. And maybe in this space, you can ask yourself the question, what do I need? What do I need to be more joyful, effective, impactful in my own life? And just go with the top hit. All right, one more big breath. Exhale. And please welcome to the Rose Woman Pod, Coach Cora Darlington. So tell me a little bit about you. How did you get into this coaching?
How did I get into this? What an interesting question. So I've probably been a kind of nurturer of women kind of all my life, starting with my mum. I think, most of us women can attribute our relationships, right back to our mums. And I always was in a nurturing position with my mum. And I have witnessed her all of her life actually struggle with prioritizing herself, looking after herself, caring for herself, to the point where a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago now, actually, she had a huge burnout and a breakdown. And she very nearly died during that period of time. And I was already coaching women then. I've been coaching and mentoring women for like over 20 years. But it was one of those moments where, and I was actually at that point in burnout myself, even though I'm a fully qualified executive coach and life coach and NLP therapist and CBT and meditation instructor and yoga instructor, all of those skills, all of that wherewithal, and yet still I had found myself in breakdown and burnout because I was trying to juggle being a wife and a mum to a 9-year-old and a corporate role as well as my own coaching business. And so it was ironic because me and my mum found ourselves poorly both at the same time. And it was just one of those moments where I just thought there has got to be another way, because I didn't want to give up my work because I loved it. And I love being driven and I love being purposeful and I love being passionate. But I also couldn't carry on the way that I was either. And I just went to work, really. 20 years of experience of being around women and knowing the narrative there. Watching all of the experiences my mum had been through and then all the experiences that I had gone through. It just I just took all of that and just put it into the work to allow a woman to, I know we talk about having it all, and I think that can be a real trigger for people, but I think, having it all is possible for all of us, as long as we do the work to know what our version of having it all is versus what the world thinks having it all is.
And possibly even the idea that you can have it all, but you don't have to have it all at once. It can be serially over the course of a lifetime. I've been really trying to get people in my life to think about a body of work or a body of play over the course of one's life and not try to stuff it all in at once. It's very interesting that the caretaking of your mother, like sort of this, what is often inferred to be an inversion of roles, where the mother's supposed to take care of the child, that the actual caretaking of her led you deeper and deeper into this professional career of witnessing and caring for other women.
Yeah, I mean, it was complicated, of course. I definitely got to a stage in my life where I felt resentful of that caretaking role. I felt like it had overshadowed my own life for a while. And I think my road to freedom in terms of that was allowing those feelings, because for quite a long time, I just accepted things. Anger is not an emotion that I'm particularly used to. Sadness and grief, yes, but not anger. And I, as a young person, I would just take things on. And it wasn't until I got a bit older that I realized that the only way that I was going to be able to move past it in any healthy way was to just allow it, really. And that didn't mean, being confrontational with my mum, although me and my mum have had some really, really candid conversations. But it meant just being okay that I was feeling the way that I was feeling. And then just looking at how that had shaped me in everything that I do, actually, and being okay with that has been like a huge, huge journey. And then just really embracing that nurturing women is my superpower. It really, really, it really is. It's my joy, and doing all the work around not being codependent, and all of that type of stuff has just really allowed me to, blossom in my work, I guess.
It sounds like, this sort of pointed out and taught you or showed you your empathic capacity, and also in all perfect ways gave you an insight into how not to do it. Like if you were really going to take it out into the world, that it had to come from this independent and loving place. And that, I mean, it sounds wonderful as an evolution where you're just allowing everything to be integrated and be what it is.
Yeah, I think this acceptance part, so often when I work with women, they are in internal war with themselves because they are driven, visionary women, like incredible women who love their work, but they also want to be mums, and they also want to be wives, and they also want to make time for themselves, and there's just this internal thing that goes on, an awful lot of guilt about the way that they are. Maybe they're high performers, or they have decided that they're workaholics. And one of the biggest pieces of work that they do is just to integrate all that they are. And in the kind of allowing all that they are, then they're able to ask themselves the question, how do I support that? How can I support that? If I am that I am, then what is it that I need? And what do I specifically need? Because it's vastly different from one woman to another, to support myself,
Okay, here's what I learned. That I love working. I love working as sort of an emphatic participation in creation. And there's also sort of an expectation or a meme that you will do it without it looking like it's work. You will, the face that you're going to present to the world is like easy and lovely and patient, and you really have all the time in the world for your family and socializing and what we used to call stenciling the driveway, like making a perfect home. When the fact is like there are just days that I want to get up and ignore all of that stuff and go right into the idea, like write what I'm called to write, or I had an inspiration overnight, and that vision of a woman as a driven inventor, creator, or worker, I don't see a lot of support for that vision.
I think some of that may be, for sure, what I've experienced is that women are not honest about how it is for them. They're just not honest about how it is for them. And they are not comfortable with being seen as messy and not having it all together. And then that means very often that they're isolated, or they isolate themselves, from people. There's shame in the not being perfect. That definitely happens. And I think that, I had a client that was on the spectrum, an incredible mind, but definitely not linear, amazing at certain things and just not so great at some of the, technical side of things, and, spent a long time making sure that everybody on the surface thought that she was doing okay. But real freedom came when she just was honest to herself, and then eventually everybody else, about how it was for her, that she was able to just say, well, I'm really good at this stuff, but I'm not so great at that. And I need some support with that, and I need some help with that. And I think that, sometimes we're not so great at even admitting that we need support and help to wrap around our brilliance. There's like such a pressure to be brilliant at everything, and I think sometimes that has us in bondage. It has us denying who we are and struggling when we don't need to, for sure.
So interesting. I want to merge two questions together then in response to that. So when you were first talking about how you got into this, there was a whole laundry list of alphabetical achievements, NLP and all of certified coaching. And so you've got all of this thing where you're like clearly moving into this love of the way the heart, mind, body work in the world and mastering skills. And then on the other side is this reality of the way things were for you. So when you and your mom had that simultaneous experience of burnout or breakdown, what did you do to sort of merge this truth-telling insight about the way it really was with all of the achievement-oriented or credential-oriented skill accumulation from before? What was the process that you went through to reconcile the two? And also, is that somewhat of the process that you've now developed for your clients? What did you do when you hit that spot where you had all the skills, but now came the time for it to really hit the ground in your own life? There must have been some way of investigating how to make that happen. That sounds like when the genius moment occurred in some ways.
Yeah. I think that it felt really dark at the time. I was back and forth the hospital, seeing my mum, looking at the culmination of a lifetime of denying her own needs, staying mute about her own opinions, seeing all of that, and then also dealing with exactly what was going on in my own life. And it doesn't sound so magnificent, but there was a whole lot of allowing. There was a whole lot of trying, not in the moment, not trying to find answers for things, not needing to know why or how or any of that. There was a kind of graceful feeling it all and waiting to see how it diffused, how it fell. And, even sat by my mum's bedside, actually. So I lost my father about 16 years ago now, and I've done an awful lot of work on myself in the interim, between him dying and then my mum being, really ill, and just witnessing the amount of work that I'd done on myself and really benefiting from that, because I was able to sit around my mum's bedside, and feel all the things that you feel, a daughter who's about to lose her mum, and yet this knowing, like this undercurrent of knowing that everything was going to be okay. And I think that's because of my practice. For the last 6 years, my earnest practice is to fall into, what is this teaching me? Like, what richness is here? What can I garner from this? And there was a passion that was born inside of me, I think, to find a way. Not just for me, but for, a lot of the women that I had been around, for, like I said, over 20 years, I've been around a lot of narrative with women. There was like a passion to find a way for us to be able to be all that we are, and yet not feel depleted and not feel like we have to somehow compromise and not feel like we have to give up on large parts of ourselves, but not from a defensive place. It felt really important for me that I didn't want to rally. You know, there's an awful lot of, especially here in the UK, and I would imagine there as well, there's a lot of stuff around the anger with the way things are with women in leadership, you know, and it isn't that I don't know that that's there, because of course I do, but I just really wanted to come from a place of exactly the place that I was coming from. Actually, I decided in that moment that I was going to treat myself like a newborn child, that I was going to nurture myself like I would my daughter when she was first born. How would I have been for her was how I was for myself. And I just noted what the steps were in order for me to do that, and just wrapped around myself in the most sublime way, and dealt with all of the things that came up around, you know, are you being self-indulgent? Are you being selfish? You know, all of the things that come up when you make yourself the priority. How did that manifest itself practically? So I gave myself permission to take a break from my corporate role, because I was qualified with all of those things. I was kind of my own worst enemy, because I had all of those tools. I didn't allow myself a break from my corporate role, even though I knew that I needed that breathing space to be able to deal with what was going on with my mum and what was beginning to happen to me. So I physically cleared some space. That was really important to me. But I just started asking myself the questions: what has me feel joyful? What has me feel alive? I didn't Google, like I think a lot of us do, you know, like a generic list of, you know, what we should be doing in order for us to, you know, feel better. And it'll be yoga, it'll be meditation. All of those things are really wonderful practices. But I think very often we don't do the work to find out what our personal joy is, what aliveness means to us. And so I did the exploratory work, really, just to really explore what those things were for me. And I gave myself them before I did anything else. I did all of that. I filled myself up first and then did. So that would mean, from a practical sense, that, you know, your mind will say, I need to start work, especially if you've worked for a corporate company and you're used to, you know, working particular hours. You know, it would be that I would start work at 9 o'clock and then I would finish at 5 o'clock or whatever it was. But when I was really with myself and I asked myself what it is that I need and what are my natural rhythms and flows, you know, it would be on a Monday morning that I would not feel like speaking to anybody until maybe 11 or 12 o'clock or something like that. And then one of the things that I discovered about myself was that I have got a real love for just wandering without agenda, without any idea of where I'm going, but just going on a walk and just wandering. And so I would allow myself that, you know, for the first couple of hours of the day, I would just go missing and wandering, and I would just fill myself up, and then I would come back and I would start my work. And what I would notice is that even though physically it looked like I had less time, the work that I did do, and when I was doing my work, felt like joy. It felt like ease. I felt productive, and I was productive, and the results that I were getting were much better. And so the radical part of my work really is to get a woman to understand that she is the asset of her own life. And if she's not doing well, nothing is going to. And so if you were literally to just put yourself first, and then how would life feel, you know?
Well, this sounds like a delightful way to start the day, but I'm really intrigued by this investigation into what is your own unique fingerprint of joy, and that it's going to be different for each person. Like, even if you said yoga or meditation, like, I know which yoga is my joy and which one is torturous for me, and I know which way that I meditate that creates expansion versus contraction, like with ones that like limit me, you know, sort of feel like I'm trying to impose an old structure, an external structure, versus one that's emergent. I found that to be true also, Cora, like this idea of, if I get my dance on, or I talk to a friend, or I reconnect with my family before I get into work, I'm so much happier. There was an old book, like, do you remember way back in the 70s or 80s, I would say, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey? Do you remember this? It's like a classic.
Yes.
And he talks about you as the golden goose. He says, you're the golden goose. And that always, that stuck with me.
Yes. I absolutely love that. I totally love that. I think one of the most powerful things that you can do, though, and this is one of the things that I've noticed, for all of the questions that I ask a woman is, what is it that you need right now? And that was definitely a question that I was asking myself, especially when I was in my burnout, like literally minute to minute. What is it that I need right now? What is it that I need right now? And being okay with, maybe not knowing in that moment, but it was the fact that I was asking myself that question. I was approaching myself with the utmost care. And so it is not just about the habits. A lot of the work that I do is very practical. I look at people's diaries, they let me in. I look at what they're doing when they get up in the morning till when they go to bed at night. I really just take a look at all of their micro habits. But my thing is that a woman begins to approach herself from a different way. So when we look at self-care, for instance, because I love a dictionary definition, right? So if you look at the words self-care, that is the definition is the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. Now, when I read that definition, that just strikes me as like looking at self-care as like a survival mechanism. I must do these things to survive, right? Versus when you look at self-nurture, the definition for that is to care for and protect someone or something while they are growing, to encourage, to cultivate, to cherish. It's like a very, very different energy to it. One is, how can I damage limitation? Whereas the other one is, I am growing and I'm encouraging myself and I'm nurturing myself. It's a very, very different approach. But one thing for sure that I notice all of the time is that women want things to be easier, but when you scratch the surface, there is such an addiction to the struggle.
That's true. I mean, first, and I just want to go back to this need thing. Like, what do I need right now? Even that question, what do I need right now? I might say water, but there's just even getting in touch with and allowing and honoring the fact that you have needs. Because I think you're not supposed to really have needs past the age of 18. just a general perception.
Exactly.
And so this switch between like self-care and self-nurture, that's such a subtle, like the tone that I've been trying to strike with Rosebud Woman is one of reverence from the very beginning, that you are worthy from your own being. Your existence is a priori holy. And so I love this shift in language, because care does seem like a little bit trimming your toenails, doesn't exactly seem like I'm nurturing a growing being. So self-nurturance and need are highly tied together. But now let's go on to this thing that you were just saying, addiction to the struggle. I have a little story from last week. I was at this detox center for 2 weeks because I have mold poisoning and not feeling well. So I went there to do a full detox, and there was an exercise classes in the morning. And the people who come to the classes are like, some people have leukemia, some people are just there for a tune-up fitness wise. And in between exercises, they had a decent song on, and I start dancing around. I start dancing with a couple of other people. And I hear other women in the group. One says, you shouldn't do that. You could sprain your ankle. And then I hear another woman say, oh, we're really showing our age knowing these songs. Women who weren't dancing, I will say. And I was thinking about like that this is the exact same external circumstance, which is totally joyful and fine. And the internal voices of every person in the group in response to it was like it was an autobiography of suffering, of how they project the story that's inside of them of bad aging or being afraid onto the world around them. And that's sort of what the addiction to struggle comment you just made brought up. So how do you unwind that? If you're addicted to the struggle, how do you become aware of that addiction and how do you unwind it?
So, I mean, the awareness of it, so a woman will come to me and they'll say, I can't carry on like I am, every day I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed. I just feel like I'm going through the motions. I thought it would feel better than this, just all of that stuff. And then we begin to do the work to, just really start to put some structures in place that are going to have them feeling, easier, that are going to clear out some spaces for them to be able to breathe more, that work. And then there is this resistance there. And it's because I think it's a couple of different things. I think sometimes women come from proving, I'm proving that I can do this. And so when we come from a place of proving, we very often treat ourselves like human performance machines. And when we're treating ourselves like human performance machines, there is no real space for you to treat yourself like a human being, let alone care for yourself. But there's an also martyrdom thing. There's like, if I suffer enough, then I will deserve this success. If I struggle enough, then I will deserve this success. It's like the addiction to the busyness, it's like this persona of I'm just so busy all the time. I've given up so much in order for me to be successful. And I'm seeing that so much. And I think women worry, if I don't look busy all the time, will people think that I don't care or I'm just not committed as my male counterparts say, for instance. I see that addiction to the struggle come up an awful lot with an awful lot of women that I work with. And, part of the unwinding of it is just the realizing realization and awareness is massive. It's huge. It opens something up and then it just begins to do its work, right? Because I think we live in a kind of culture where we want answers to everything right now. But once awareness opens and you're aware of something and you know something, you can't take that back. And I think that begins or opens the opportunity for a different way of being, and a different way forward for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's something even deeper in here, like if I suffer, I deserve. That whole line of thinking is so tied in with, transgenerational programming and religion and all kinds of things about earning your way into heaven, earning your way into your title. And the countervailing cosmology is something like, it's not me anyway. I'm just expressing, like the universe is running through me and I'm expressing it and it's easy. I'm a channel. But there's got to be a way to start recognizing that belief and consciously shifting the underlying belief structure, I guess. It's like you're noticing the struggle, but how do you change these deeply entrenched cultural patterns around what is being worthy?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess, for me, it's like it starts with the awareness and then it starts with just taking a little look at where it's coming from, as far back as you possibly can, I guess. And then it's in the world of action, I believe that things begin to actually change, So my experience would be, it's almost like a hand-holding thing, and then that is frowned upon, right? Because we're supposed to be self-empowered, we're supposed to do everything by ourselves, and that's like this thing. But what I notice is that, when somebody is stood by us that cares about us, when somebody's invested in us, when somebody's watching us, when somebody's loving us and they're holding our hand, we're able to try new ways of being, a new way of, saying something, allowing things that you wouldn't normally allow. I noticed I was walking down the road with my little girl and she loves to sing. And she was, we weren't holding hands. She was kind of walking in front of me and she was singing along to a song. And she held my hand. And the minute that she held my hand, her voice went up, so much louder. She was singing so much louder and she was so much more brave and her body language changed and she was just so much more confident. And that was a moment for me. I was like, I really get that. I get that when, somebody is with me, and they're holding my hand, that I can be that much braver in the world. And so, yeah, I don't know. All that I know is that as soon as a woman gets a level of awareness and they can be honest, do you actually want it to be easier? If you do want it to be easier, then let's just one step at a time take a look at what that could look like and could feel like. And then let's deal with everything else as it comes up, as it comes up, because none of it is linear. Absolutely none of it is linear at all.
This is beautiful. The idea of that healing happens more with another person, and that the ability to do the good, the little actions that lead to big change is enhanced when you're holding someone's hand. That is a counter to the do-it-yourself isolated meat suit model of modern culture. Yeah. But it's beautiful. So I've never had a coach, and everybody who has one loves it. So tell me a little bit about what the coaching process looks like, and how people should go about finding the one for them.
The coaching process, I'm almost starting to really struggle with it's interesting, isn't it? I'm already starting to struggle with this whole coaching thing. It feels like every day I probably go over the line in terms of coach of what it is to be a coach, professional boundaries and things like that, because I really do, fall in love with another woman's journey, and what is going on for her. And so the coaching process, my specific coaching process, do you mean, or just coaching processes just in general?
Well, how should we do it? I think the question is a little bit broad. So let's talk about what you do, basically, like how you intake a person, how you assess or develop like an intention with what you're going to be doing together. How much of it is, a personal or a professional thing? Like, what's it look like to work with someone like you, or with you in particular? And then we can talk more broadly about, choosing a coach or why even do that?
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the first things that I will do is run a certain process on a woman's life. So I take a look at, it's almost like an assessment or a diagnostic, actually, of their business life and their home life, just to take a look at exactly what is going on there. Now, that can feel really intrusive for a woman, for sure. But it allows me to really be able to get actually inside of exactly what is going on, so that I'm able to make some suggestions very quickly and very early on, so that a woman who is in, some women come to me and they are, they're not in a great way at all. And so we're looking to find a way to bring immediate relief and less overwhelm to their situation. So the first thing we do is get clarity, really. And I think that's the same in any coaching process. You have got to start with a certain degree of clarity. Where are you right now? And can you be absolutely honest about how it is for you? And so there's a really beautiful process that I go through in order to open somebody up. That includes some meditation. I'm a massive advocate for meditation. Meditation has 100% changed my life. And so meditation is a tool that I use within my coaching. And it's just to get a woman present to exactly how it is for her right now. And that obviously means creating a really safe space. And then from there, there's like a series of different explorations. There's a whole exploration around their joy, what has them feeling alive. How do they even want to feel, actually? How do you want to feel every day when you wake up in the morning? How do you want to feel when you're in your business? How do you want to feel when you go to bed at night? There's a guided process, again, that includes some meditation that just draws that out of them. And then we just take a look at, okay, well, if you want to feel this way, if you want to feel these ways, what has you feeling those ways? And then once we know that, then we can begin to create a framework that they are able to, begin to make that real in their lives and see what that is actually like. That includes things like applying what I would call non-negotiables. Some people call it boundaries. Mine are called non-negotiables. And they are things like absolute, like tiny little things that you apply to your days and your weeks and your months to protect the things that are really important to you. So if I give you an example, if I've got a busy week It may well be that I might feel guilty because my little girl might be seeing me less. But my non-negotiable is that every single Tuesday night, without fail, I will pick her up from school. I will not have any tech. And she has my uninterrupted present time for that Tuesday evening. And it does not matter what else is going on in my life. I do not touch that period of time. That's my non-negotiable. Now, what that means is that it allows me to feel much more free of guilt. It makes me feel much more spacious the rest of the week. That little tiny little non-negotiable frees up so much energy that would otherwise be having me feeling guilty or having me feeling scattered or having me feeling like I have to find time for my daughter. They seem silly things, but these tiny non-negotiables, they just free up so much internal space and so much internal energy for us. And so we go through this whole non-negotiable exploration, and then we also look at support teams. What is it you need as a support team? If you could just say to yourself, and you could highlight, this is my zone of genius, I don't enjoy doing this and I'm not very good at that, what would your support team look like? And of course, along with that comes the energetic work to allow yourself to be supported, because very often we don't want to do that. We don't even want to admit that we need to help. So there's an awful lot of stuff that goes into the work that I do. But also, one of the highly practical aspects is that I will be with a woman every single week. We will pull up their diaries, or we pull up their and we look at their time. What worked really well last week? How did you feel last week? And then, what does your next couple of weeks look like? What do you want? What do you want to build in there? So, for instance, if a woman's got a massive project coming on, the classical way of dealing with that I see is that they just will throw themselves into it, get it over and done with as soon as they possibly can, and then deal with the fallout after. And I'm saying, if you are approaching yourself from this place of nurture and you're taking a look at this thing that you've got on, that's coming up for you, how do you wrap around that? Who do you need to have communication with? What do you need to put in place? So not only do you get through it, but you do it and you enjoy it. And then at the other end, you're not trying to put yourself back together again. And so, yeah, they're just a few of the processes.
I mean, even that example, like I've got a big deadline coming up. It's going to be harder for me to feed myself and my family healthy. It's going to be harder for me to get the sleep that I need. So for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to, order in one of those food delivery services. I'm going to in advance make dates for my kids to do other things that are interesting to them. There's just the idea that you put a framework around it so that you don't feel depleted and the guilt can be released. That's a new idea for me. Like just to anticipate. I mean, unless you're an infant just starting your career, you've been here before. Yeah. And at the end of 2 weeks what you feel like when you haven't exercised for 2 weeks, and you've gotten 5 hours of sleep and most of it not REM. So just even simple things like that. But deeper than that, inherent in your process is an alignment between your deepest values and your time. And it feels to me like you get a little bit, like I get janky internally when I'm living out of alignment with my values. And so so much. So a big piece of the work that I do is around a woman's values, their core values, because this alignment, like it pisses me off. I don't know whether or not I'm allowed to swear. but it really frustrates me. Because people will say, is it an alignment? But until you've done the work to know your values, what is most important to you? How do you know what you're in alignment with and not? I mean, it's interesting because when you say someone comes to me and they're generally in crisis, people don't generally embark on a new coaching process or even a therapeutic relationship unless they're really in a problem state. And yet your process is, you do a little triage, it sounds like, but taking down people to some really core places. What are your needs? What are your values? What's the state that you actually desire? And then we can engineer tricks and habits, and I can align with you and hold your hand to make that a reality. That's deep work. It really is. It's life architecture. It's like lifting yourself out of survival mode and just really learning how to be the architect of your own life, really. And I think one of the biggest things that I witness, the transformation that takes place
is that not that everything in life is going perfectly well, because we know that that does not happen, but there's a confidence about them that they know how to navigate anything and everything that is going to be coming at them, because they know what they need and they're not afraid to give themselves it. And so that's freedom. You know, you're not selling somebody a pipe dream of do this 3-step process, and at the end of it, your life will look amazing. It is not like that, because life is not like that. But their viewpoint on life is very different. You know, by the time they finish the process, how they approach themselves is hugely different, and their skills to be able to navigate themselves through life, not just in the survival mode, but just in the most beautiful way, is there, you know, even when things are not great. And I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of. You know, there's been some amazing examples of, you know, women that were struggling with one child and running a business, and now, you know, they've scaled their business and then they're into their second child and they're doing it gracefully. You know, that doesn't mean everything's perfect, but they are stable internally. That is huge. And I guess my vision really is to nurture some, you know, is to hold space for some of the world's most incredible women, actually, so that when they're out there doing their amazing work, they're doing it from a full space rather than from a space of depletion.
Your meditation is showing.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like this. I don't know if Michelle told you, but I live on a volcano. I live on the world's most hazardous volcano, in fact. And, you know, there are tremors on the regular, and you are getting this very physical reminder that you live on a quivering planet. But the reality is that the culture is quivering. Our economies are quivering. Life in these bodies is always changing. You never know what's coming. Yeah. And so this cultivation of the inner stability that can respond to the world as it arises in the spacious way seems to be like the birthplace from which even more wonderful things can happen. I love that as an approach to coaching, not as like performance coaching, you know, how to be better at what you do. It's like, it sounds more like being a guide to the inner stability that would allow you to do your best work in the world. And that's beautiful.
That's interesting as you say that, because inner stability is probably, if somebody were to say, what are you most proud of? What is your biggest personal achievement? It would be that I've come from a place of such fear and anxiety for the first 30-something years of my life. To feel the inner stability that I feel right now is probably nothing less than a miracle. And so I think because I have experienced such a massive transformation around that, and I know the freedom there, because once you're internally stable, it doesn't matter what life brings up. You know you're going to be okay. And so I greatly want that for women.
So I can't, this is already an hour, if you can believe it. I can't. And we're so aligned in this vision for what is possible. And to be I think of it on the daily of like, where's my freedom? Where am I not free? Yeah. And I've been watching lately, if I get contracted or tight about something, or I get like, you know, I have a particular tic, which is my face pinches up when I'm up, like literally my mouth looks like a sphincter when I get nervous. It like just puckers up. Like I've never smoked in my life, but my aging tell is the little lines around my mouth from being a pucker face. And so I was like, I know that there's not one of my tells that I'm not free is if I'm puckering my face, or if I have like an energetic contraction, or if I'm bored. That's another tell that I'm in contraction, that I'm not being free with my choices. If I'm bored, if I'm resentful. And so for me, the noticing is like, where do I contract? And then like letting that resolve and just notice it. Yeah. So that's also the fruit of meditation and body practices. Yeah. And I've been trying to deprogram the whole thing that you mentioned earlier around like, you have to be like really showing how hard you're working. You post, how hard you're working, but you never post the fun you're having.
Do you know, and you never see anybody, you see these people get up on stage and they're talking about, they give their story of like success, and there's so much admiration for the struggle. It's like, I lost my business and I nearly lost my marriage, and then I went through all of that and I was like really successful, but there's not that much applause for the person that gets up there and goes, wow, I kind of just found a way for it to feel easy, not easy as in I wasn't working, but ease and effortlessness. And ease and effortlessness are probably my favorite. Ease, effortlessness, and spaciousness. Really, like they light me up. And I am determined to be a physical live demonstration of what it looks like to have the most beautiful life with ease and effortlessness and spaciousness. But there is not that much admiration for that experience.
People think you're lucky then, and it's not replicable, because work is replicable, but luck is not. And I want to say that I don't think that's actually reality. I think what's replicable is finding a way to see synchronicity and see serendipity and understand that when that's hitting you, there's some intuition at work, and that often following that is you're being invited into a less effortful way of manifesting what is possible, and that to trust that just as much as you trust the sweat of the brow, and or if not more. And people will ask, like when we were studying this particular business, and I kept saying, the stars just keep aligning. The right people show up, the right relationships show up. And it seems a little magical, but what's behind that ease is listening to women, listening for the voice, asking the question, hey, I'm looking for a great supplier. Do you know anybody who does that really spaciously? And that like I'm getting the same work done, but I'm getting it done with a different quality of inquiry and play than I did 20 years ago in my early career, when I was just a fierce pucker face.
Do you know what? I think one of my biggest practices. I read a book by Michael A. Singer called The Surrender Experiment. And it completely changed my life. And I think from that day on, surrender became something that I was so intrigued with and practice all the time. And people look at surrender and they're like, it's passive and it's a cop out or whatever. But I think surrendering really to the flow of life, really trusting, is probably one of the most courageous, strong things that you can do, that you can really, really do. It's such a, I've surrendered for the last 5 to 6 years and followed what I would call divine breadcrumbs, is what I like to call them. Just an intuition here and an idea there, and that comes directly from a space of meditation. And then when I look back, how it's all strung itself together, I could never have even foretold or foreseen, ever. And so I love that about life.
And there's two aspects that come up when you say that in the surrender, the idea of the divine breadcrumbs, by the way, very, very beautiful. I like that as a title for a book, Divine Breadcrumbs. But there's two kinds of surrender that I think there's surrendering to what is, like not arguing with reality, which is this is happening. There's no need for me to make it worse by getting upset about it. It is what it is. And then you can navigate your way out of it with a lot less stress or tension. Instead of kicking yourself, it should be different. Well, it's not different. Why bother? Why bother with it should be different? Unless you use it like later as a way of improving process or trying to figure out some way to avoid it from happening, stop it from happening again. That's the one kind of surrender, just acceptance. And then the other piece is there are forces at work that are greater than my will. And that if I'm tuning in, like I believe in Buddhism, for example, it's the only religion that has ongoing revelation baked into its theology. So they believe that what is needed in the culture, teachings that are needed in the culture, will appear spontaneously in time space to be downloaded by specific scribes when it's necessary, which is, that's not present in Christianity. It also precludes the fact of new people being channels. So this idea that there's always something going on that you can listen into and birth in the greater collective consciousness is the same reason the same inventions appear simultaneously all over the earth at the same time. It's not just Tesla that did the Tesla coil. There were others at the same exact time. And so there's something about saying, not only is surrender not weakness, it's actually opening me up to receive a greater possibility. If I'm not so tight and hanging on to just this situation. So you live in sort of a modern, a contemporary mysticism almost. You allow for a little bit of that to inform your QuickBooks, you know?
Yeah, this is what I mean. You know, the job that I'm, you know, it's a kind of a roundabout sales job I do really with the women that I work with, because I go in on one way, but what they're really learning is that prepare your environment, prepare your atmosphere for joy, and then connection, and then new inspiration, and all of those types of things. So we go through this process, but really secretly, covertly, I'm getting them to really create this beautiful atmosphere for themselves that is just going to make them so much less resistant and so much more open to the light and the love that they really are.
So today, we're going to prepare our atmosphere for joy. I'm going to find a little bit of divine breadcrumb to follow. I'm going to ask myself, what do I need in the moment? And I have a feeling it's going to be a better day than usual, which they're pretty good anyway. Are you working on a book? Are you working on a program? Or is there some way that people could get in touch with you?
I am. I have a 12-month program, which is called Thrive. And it's 12 months because the truth of the matter is, you know, a lot of this stuff is really long-term behavioral change, and it takes a long time to embody something different. It takes a long time to be different. And I think any shorter than that, and it doesn't feel real and honest to me. Now, other people might have a different opinion about that, but when I really felt into it, to walk with a woman for a year, you know, when the process is over, there is just such a magnificent shift. So the program with me is for a year, and it's called Thrive. Very, very beautiful process.
And that's CoraDarlington.com?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's been absolutely lovely to talk with you.
Oh, thank you so much for your time today. You've got such a beautiful way of expressing and asking questions. I'm really very much involved.
I think we've been on a similar path, unwinding the patriarchy that's in your own system. All right, have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thank you so much for joining me on the Rose Woman Pod. I'm Christine Marie Mason, your host. The pod is brought to you by Rosebud Woman, a company I started in the intimate skincare space. You can find our amazing products at rosewoman.com. Vegan, plant-based, pure, effective, all the good stuff. The guests and I imagine people out there when we do these shows and think, how can we bring one little bit of insight, one little lever to create more spaciousness or happiness out to the world? So if you like the pod, you know what to do. Please share it, rate it, review it, subscribe, all of that stuff, so that we can feel your love and support and keep doing it. Have a wonderful day, no matter where you're at. May the grace and joy that rests at the center of you be readily apparent. See you next time.